Moriden Athluan.
The story of his near single-handed assault on Windhelm and his execution of the traitor Ulrich Stormcloak of Windhelm are staples of the Imperial Legion. His devotion to duty, his zeal in combat, his dedication to the safety of the Empire and its citizens are told to all new recruits of the Legion.
Though his actions in the Civil War were what drew the eyes of all Tamriel to him, it is not what he is best known for. No, for it was after his days in the Legion that he began to show his true dedication to both the gods and the people of the Empire.
Come now and hear the tale of the Moriden Athluan's glorious mercenary days, and the great good that he did for all the people of Skyrim.
The bards can
worked
always
the
be
gods'
trusted
names.
to take a story and turn it to their own ends. There are elements of truth to their story. The truth, though, the truth is not what the bards would have you believe. Three Frostfall, 4th Era, 201. The remainder of the journey to Solitude was, as might be expected, short and uneventful. On arrival in the city, I sent Lydia off to grab a drink at the Skeever, while I went to the museum to look into the job. She raised an eyebrow at being left behind, but once I explained my reasons, she nodded in acceptance, if not approval. You see, this museum is being styled as the Dragonborn Gallery. Since I am the Dragonborn, probably, they've essentially named it after me. If I were to show up and make a big deal about that, yes, they'd almost have to accept me into their ranks, but they'd be doing it on a title. I don't want that. I want acceptance to be based on who I am and what I can do, not some title, not even Thane of a distant hold, which Lydia's presence and title would also reveal. Maybe it's some kind of reverse false pride or something, I don't know. After being rejected by both your home and an army you thought had your back, maybe I just have some issues to work out. The gallery was on the south side of the city, not far from the Blue Palace. The new gates and emblems placed on them were suitably impressive, though I'm curious where they got hold of a dragon skull. I know they've been found in a few places, but I also thought that most of the people who had gotten them placed huge value on them, which made me wonder if this was a new skull, and if so, which one of the dragons that had almost eaten me this had once belonged to. The Ultima curator of the Dragonborn Gallery goes by the name of Aryan Morellis. Relatively cheerful Mer, from his tone, though that may just be his public face. When I entered, he almost turned me around, thinking I was just a visitor, but once he saw my gear, he guessed that I was here for the collector position, which, of course, I was. He hadn't had much luck with his previous applicants, he admitted. The same 3 items he'd sent them all out to find, and not a one of them returned. items or hunters, take your pick. So though he's giving me the same task given out several times before, he still wished me the best of luck on retrieving them. Something, though, caught my attention as he listed all the items he wanted. How on earth did he know where any of this stuff was? 2 were in the hands of bandit clans, one in Riften and one in Whiterun, and the other was supposed to be in the hands of the Forsworn. These groups are not exactly in the business of advertising that they have artifacts in their possession. So how does Aryan have even a clue where these things are? If he's wrong, then no wonder the others never came back. If he's right, then I have even more questions than I did before about this myrrh. Either way, however, I have a trial to complete. I'll collect Lydia from her drink at the Skiver and make for Markarth first. I've not been in the city there before. There was no need during the war. But I hear it's a close second for the most corrupt hold in Skyrim honors. The Reach. A hold that stands on the brink of its own civil war, from what I've heard. I shouldn't be shocked. Ulfric Stormcloak was involved in making the city and the hold the cesspit it has become. He came in, pacified the region by evicting its native residents, the Reachmen, and imported all the Nords he could to make the hold a proper part of Skyrim. Instead, he created the Forsworn, a group of Reachmen dedicated to regaining their ancestral home. It's funny to me just how similar the situations were between the Skyrim Civil War and the coming hostilities in the Reach. Even the war cry of the Forsworn is practically identical. I wonder who stole it from who. Entering this region is always dangerous, so Lydia kept her shield ready instead of on her back, certain that combat was all but promised. She's the expert in such matters, so I followed suit. Look for danger, and it appears. A dragon swooped up over the ridge and started tearing into the border outpost as we were passing through it. This was Lydia's first dragon, and her reactions did not disappoint. She charged straight at the thing, her sword flashing. I fell back somewhat. Between the soldiers and Lydia, I'd have been in the way, but that did mean I had plenty of room to place arrow fire into the beast. And that is really more my forte. The dragon, after taking several large wounds, showed some smarts and winged out of the area. Unfortunately, that left all of the Forsworn in a nearby stronghold agitated. They'd wandered over near the guard post to see the dragon, and once it was gone, things degenerated rather quickly. In total, 5 Reach guards died, in return for which about 10 Forsworn warriors, all of them female, oddly enough, were killed. While that's still a better ratio than might be expected, it is still a heavier toll than what we might have hoped for. Then again, the Forsworn were going to likely die regardless when Lydia and myself walked through the canyon anyhow, so having the extra help wasn't a horrible thing. We were just stepping beyond the fortress when, unexpectedly, I felt the strange disorientation I've come to associate with dead dragons. I looked back to the east, the direction where the dragon had flown off, and realized that the direction it had gone was straight at a major crossroads, full of members of the Whiterun Guard. If I had to guess, and I must stress that this is a guess, the dragon was downed by the guard there. The guard are likely in a bit of a panic right now, having seen a dragon descend upon them, die, catch fire for no readily explainable reason, and then see a surge of energy fly off toward the west, where I just absorbed it. No idea what concept I just got, but the guard just got one oblivion of a story. We didn't reach Markarth until late in the evening. The lights were a welcome sight, as tired as we were, though Lydia was quick to remind me that this was not a place to be unwary. It's not Riften with its Thieves' Guild, she told me. In a way, what they have is a bit worse. Though people went out of the way to avoid antagonizing the Blackbriars of Riften, no one dares to even look crosswise at the Silverbloods of Markarth. The Jarl might rule on paper, but the Silverbloods run it in truth. There is no fiction here. Even the Jarl is aware of this little fact, and tries not to get in their way, just like everyone else. A hive of scum and villainy, it seems. We must be cautious. Why there was still any stall open this late at night, I have no idea. But it was, and it had attracted a customer. Somehow. The woman, whoever she was enamored of a necklace, and as she was examining it, was stabbed in the back. Intentional murder, robbery gone wrong, I can't say. All I know is that she died almost instantly. That would have been bad enough. But then the killer tried to go on some kind of rampage, and was quickly put down by the Markarth guard. The only screams that were halfway understandable was from the killer, something about the Forsworn. The guard spent the next 5 minutes not checking on the victim, who was still alive at that point, but on telling the 4 people who were witnesses that there were no Forsworn in Markarth. I'm not sure I can agree, but it certainly told me a lot of what I'd heard about Markarth may well be true. One of the locals approached me and asked me what I'd seen. It was little enough, but as they walked away, I realized he'd left me with a note, a request to meet him in the Shrine of Talos at midnight, which wasn't far off. I'm not here for politics, but maybe it is the similarities I see between this hold's status and the civil war I just fought. Maybe it's because Stormcloak was involved in setting this place up and I want to see it torn down. No matter what it was, though, I decided to meet with this local. I was on my way to the shrine when I was stopped by a vigilant. I've never cared for them, self-important and pompous, believing that they, and they alone, can stand between mortals and the evils of the Daedra. I'm not sure why he stopped me when I was clearly not a local, but he wanted information on the home he was in front of, said it might be used for Daedric worship. I walked away after telling him I knew nothing. It was the truth, after all. 4 Frostfall, 4th Era, 201. The same local met me at the Talos Shrine, which I was honestly surprised was still up, given that the Empire is being forced to enforce the Dominion's rules on his worship, for all the good that's done. He was an angry man, and given what he told me, he had the right to be. His father, killed under suspicious circumstances, a known agent of the Forsworn being allowed to roam around and kill at will, without interference from the Guard, and the Guard acting like nothing is wrong at all. It's not Windhelm, but there are enough similarities that my old rage came to the front. I can take a day or two to look into this. I just fought to erase this kind of garbage from Skyrim. I won't let it remain here. We slept at the Silverblood Inn. Even the innkeeper doesn't pretend that the inn doesn't belong to the family of the same name, and its prices are up there with every other overpriced inn I've seen across Skyrim, especially given the rock-hard, literally, beds that are provided. As I was dozing off, I was continuing to ponder my future. That was when I noticed Lydia quietly spending a moment or two in prayer. I don't know her chosen deity, and it felt rude to ask, but it did spark a question in my own mind. In my years, admittedly not many, I have seen little evidence that the gods care about what happens on Nirn. There is little doubt the Daedra do. There are plenty of stories, some of them recent, that make that quite plain. If the Oblivion Crisis wasn't enough to make that plain by itself. So why? Why do people devote their lives to serve in the Daedra if, really, there is little evidence that they even care? I have given assistance to Kennereth with the whole Gildergreen thing. All I got for that fiasco was a new set of small scars and a primal fear reaction when hag-ravens are mentioned. I can only think of 2 other temples to a single Daedra, Mara in Riften, and Dibella here in Markarth. Perhaps I could spend a little more time looking into this. So many seem to find purpose and service to these unresponsive gods. Perhaps, as long a shot as it is, I could do the same. Since Dibella's temple is here, it might be the right place to start. My first stop in Markarth was the Warrens, the Markarth equivalent of the Grey Quarter in Rindhelm, where the unwanted, the sick, the crippled all end up, eking out a bare existence. Cast out from normal society here in the city, such as it is, they have created their own, founded on a distrust of anyone from the city itself. As an outsider, I was able to convince the local keykeeper to allow me to go through Wayland's things before the room was given to another of their outcast society. The hallway was full of garbage, bones, and other cast-offs. As bad as the quarter was, I have to admit that this place is worse. I opened the doors to the room, and I looked through what there was. Not much, though he had managed to get a chest to keep what he did have locked up. There was a note in that chest that told me much. That Wayland had not chosen to do the killing randomly. Someone set up the entire situation, ensuring that Wayland would be in the place when the time was right. There is someone else behind this. But all I have is an initial. N. I didn't have to wait long to find out who N was, mostly because they have incompetent help. If you want to ensure that someone keeps looking into things, tell them they shouldn't. If you want to make sure that person treats it like a personal mission, send someone to beat them into a pulp to dissuade them. This last was the choice of the mysterious N, to send a heavy to beat me into submission as a warning to keep my nose out of the affair. That's almost funny, actually, given that N is a man named Nepos the Nose. I'm going to guess that the named facial feature is fairly spectacular in this case. If he'd left well enough alone, chances are I'd never have gone further into this. But now, I have a name. Before talking to him, though, there is still the matter of who the woman was, and my intended visit to the Temple of Dibella. Perhaps I'll do the latter first, make Nepos think that I am backing off. The woman of interest, Margaret, had been staying in the Silverblood Inn. Not a shock, given there is nowhere else to stay. But there was an oddity about her stay, something that nobody would do normally without some really, really good reason. She'd paid for an entire month. Up front. That is no small amount of cash given the prices here. It made me very, very curious. I broke into her room and found her journal, which explained a lot and gave me even more questions. Caster, Margaret, to give her the proper rank, is a member of the Imperial Legions sent by General Tullius to obtain the Sidna Mines, the silver mine that is the source of the Silverblood's wealth and power. It is also, perhaps not coincidentally, the prison for the entire hold. They say no one ever escapes it once they've been thrown in. Her journal indicates she was arranging the sale to prevent a bunch of Stormcloak sympathizers from having access to those prisoners. Given the war is over, her efforts were largely going to be wasted, but apparently there is more to this. Otherwise, why have her killed? There's a key piece of information that I am missing here. Odds are, Nepos the Nose knows. Oh. I can't believe I just wrote that with a straight face. Well, that will wait for tomorrow. Today, I'm going to look at the Dibellans. I did not even get out of the door of the inn when I was stopped by one of the Markarth guard, and his message was identical to that of the Heavy earlier this morning, though without the attempted beating. This has told me that there is not one but two separate forces competing here, else there would not have been two different warnings. What have I stepped into? I will think more on this later. As with the earlier tough, I'm going to let whoever is behind this warning think that I am backing off, at least for now. Given Margaret's journal, I'm inclined to believe it might be Thonar Silverblood, the youngest brother in the family, but also the one who runs the family, from her notes. So many questions. But later. What good is a temple if the workers there don't even want you present? I was informed as soon as I entered that the sisters, for all the priesthood of Dibella are women, as it turns out, were in seclusion, communing with Dibella. Well, I was wondering this morning if the gods took a direct hand in affairs here, and this sounds like exactly what I was looking to find. That being the case, and of course my contrary nature demanding it, I had no choice but to slip past those few sisters who were in the main room and take a look for myself. I picked the lock and entered the back rooms of the temple. If the gods will not come to me, then I shall go to the... No, that wouldn't end well. Forget I even said it. I entered the rooms, sneaking my way around to see what exactly these Dibellans were doing. As best I could tell, from my hiding place 5 feet from them, was nothing. Shouting at empty air. Demanding, not asking, demanding that they be led to something called a Sibyl. Not exactly exciting things, I have to admit, and it certainly did nothing to change my mind about how little the gods were taking a hand in the world. I made a small slip as I was leaving and drew their attention, which gave me a new task and several opinions on the nature of Dibella, or at least her worshippers. They claim that the Sibyl is in constant and direct connection to Dibella from the time she is a little girl up until she dies as an old hag. They've recently lost their Sibyl and claim to have had a vision that the new one lives up in Karthwasten. How does this involve me? Well, it seems that men in this part of the temple is some kind of major bad thing, usually punishable, according to their head priestess, by a swift death. While it might have been entertaining to see them try it, I don't want to be responsible for the slaughter of an entire priesthood. Priestesshood, whatever. If they are truthful, then I will find the girl up in Karthwasten. That, in my mind, is the first test. The second is to see if the girl is actually talking to a god or not. Both of these, along with not killing all the priestesses here, means going along with this madness. Off I go to Karthwasten, it seems. If this doesn't convince Thonar and Nepos that I'm backing off, nothing will. The entirety of the Reach appears set to have welcome mats laid out for me when I arrive. This time it wasn't a murder, at least not in the traditional sense of the term. The Silverbloods are doing little to endear me to them, and this example of strong-arm tactics does not help their case. Some days ago, Karthwasten was attacked by a group of Forsworn. Not a huge surprise in this part of Skyrim. The mercenary sellswords who showed up almost before the Forsworn had left, however, was a little unusual. They are here at the behest of the Silverbloods to protect the mine from additional attacks, which somehow includes not letting the miners do their jobs. This made no sense, until the mine owner mentioned that the only time he believed that there would be no Forsworn in the area was after he had sold his farm to the Silverbloods. Everything clicked into place. The only question I had was how the Silverbloods had enticed the Forsworn into the original attack, or if that attack had even actually been the Forsworn. I asked the owner about the girl and he clammed up tight. Said I needed to talk to someone called Enman, and once I had hunted him down, he didn't trust me at all, refused to even speak to me about it. Perhaps dealing with the mine situation will help here. And if not, then all I have lost is time. I have been told that negotiation can result in better results for everyone. I decided that now was a good time to test this theory. I approached the leader of the sellswords in the mine and made a very simple and straightforward proposition, that when the people of a city don't want you around, it is usually wise to leave before they remember that pitchforks can be used for stabbing and that torches can be used for burning. You can't spend money if you aren't alive, I reminded him. He was not receptive to the idea, which means that I have little choice but to try an alternate form of negotiation. I walked into the shadows and started negotiating with my bow. Without getting into the finer details, negotiations were short. I informed the mine owner that the sellswords would no longer be a problem, and then went to find Enman again. He was a bit more trusting this time, but was still clearly agitated. Indeed, based on what he tells me, I think I misunderstood the Forsworn situation here in Karthwasten. It may not have been the Silverbloods who instigated the affair, just the ones who seized advantage of what had already happened. The only thing taken when the Forsworn attacked was Enman's daughter, Fjotra. Nothing else. I can't think this to be a coincidence, even with my skepticism concerning all things Aedra at the moment. Even more interesting, the Forsworn in question had been tracked to Broken Tower Redoubt, the same place that we nearly cleared when the dragon attacked yesterday, the group that was all women. This also seems now to be an unlikely coincidence of some kind, though what it means is still beyond me. What I do understand is this. There is no inn in Karthwasten, but there are some people who need killing at the Redoubt, where, surely, they also sleep. So by removing the one, I can get some of the other. Perfect negotiation result.